All right, and we are live with another edition of the Thursday live stream. Good to have you all here. Can you all hear the intro music in the lead up to these shows? I really have no idea. I'm just clicking share screen and then hope for the best. So let me know if you guys can actually even hear that intro music, or at least hear it well. If you can hear it, that was Sarà perché ti amo. And I chose an Italian song today because we are going to talk briefly. Well, I don't know, briefly. We've got a lot to talk about today. So this actually might be a stream that goes over the 2-hour norm that we usually do, because there are so many current things to address. So let's start with the Italian elections, because that is what the Italian song was chosen for. And we did kind of get into this last week, but now the elections have come and gone, so we can talk about them in a bit more detail. So last stream, I spoke somewhat reservedly positively about the elections, because as I've said many times, I don't want to demoralize you guys. And it is worthwhile to look for positives, white pills, if you will, if you want to use that term, in whenever we can. So I mentioned in the last stream that it looked like the right-wing coalition was going to win. Everything was pointing towards that, and it came to pass. And so, let's just delve into this a bit more. So let's start off with the good things. What is good about Giorgia Meloni, the brothers of Italy, and what can we be positive? What can people like us feel positive about? Well, the first main thing to keep in mind is that this is the first right-wing or center-right-wing government that Italy has had in decades. You could even say since, that's the mainstream media is saying, since Mussolini. I'm not so sure about that, and we'll get into that. But it's important to realize that it's worthwhile Are we going to have problems today? Are we back on? Are we back connected? Let me know in the chat. I've had to change my broadcast studio due to external circumstances. So there might even be a bit of an echo. I mean, like a tiny little cupboard here. And the internet connection is not the best in this part of my flat. So if there's any problems, just let me know. It does look like we lost connection there for a second. But anyway, okay, thanks, Reed Johnson, for letting me know that I'm back. So what I was saying is, the last time the right wing was in power was around I think it was 2017 or 2018, when Lega was elected, and that was Salvini's party. And Lega, however, formed a coalition with a left-wing populist party called Five Star. And so it wasn't really a right-wing government. It wasn't a conservative government. And ultimately, the left-wing populist party betrayed Lega. And, there was lots of political drama, the kind of stuff that you're usually exposed to in Italian politics. But ultimately, it led to the collapse of the government. It led to the ousting of Salvini from politics for quite some time. And Five Star basically stole the show. So it was quite treacherous. In this case, now we've got a coalition of only right-wing parties. There's no coalition with a left-wing populist group. There's no coalition with center left or anything like that. These are all, in name at least, right wing or center right parties. So we've got Lega is back on the scene, but the big cheese, the top dog is Fratelli d'Italia, the Brothers of Italy. And then Silvio Berlusconi is back with Forza Italia. But Fratelli d'Italia is going to be, it is now the party that made the most gains. They are going to be leading this coalition. And that party leader is Giorgia Meloni. Okay, so all in all, I suppose, if you wanted to look for something positive, if you want to try and, reach out to the light and not feel so demoralized all the time, you could allow yourself to say that this is, at least if nothing else, a step in the right direction. And Giorgia Meloni, along with Salvini, they have given really great speeches. I don't deny that you can find videos of Giorgia Meloni delivering excellent speeches, saying things that we agree with. I can think of speeches where she has called out Macron for the hypocrisy and pernicious evil, really, of the Macron government and the Macron vision. And when Macron does things like, round up the unwanted Africans in France and then just dump them across the Alpine border into Italy, you might, if you're a French nationalist, you might say that is très based. But, if you're Italian, that's kind of ridiculous. And of course, if Macron is constantly taking photo ops with his favorite little dindus and is in support of this continuous stream of mass immigration from Africa, then it's kind of really hypocritical for him to be dumping them over into Italy. Meloni has spoken about the international financiers and speculators and how they have ruined people's lives. They've ruined national sovereignty and stability. She has spoken about there's this one speech in particular where she actually went to Spain at a Vox rally and was sort of a guest of honor there, a keynote speaker, whatever you want to call it. And she gave a speech in which she said, yes to the family, no to the LGBT lobby, yes to secure borders, no to terrorism and violence from Islamists and things like that. And it's funny, actually, that speech, if you find it, it kind of went viral again in the wake of her election. And in the mainstream social media accounts that were re-sharing that speech, all the comments full of like NPCs and normies and all that, like libtard people, they were just, apoplectic. Que vergogna, what, such a shame. I feel embarrassed to be Italian, or, we're all going to die. This is horrible. And it's like, all she's saying is that she's pro-family, pro-secure borders. She said, sì alla vita, right? Yes to life, no to despondency and despair and death. Like, you have to be out of your mind to have a problem with the words in that speech. But again, it is just a speech. And while Meloni and Salvini and other members of their respective parties have made great speeches, their actions speak louder than words. And I've spoken many times about how Salvini is ultimately a Zionist. He is very much pro-Israel. He is a civic nationalist. There are a plethora of photos with him and various African migrants, but he's happy to take pictures with them and support them and for many reasons to not look racist, but also because he believes that It's just the illegal immigration that's a problem. And that if these Africans or Maghrebis or Pakistanis or whatever, if they come in legally and just adopt European values, if they wear a Lega cap or a Lega t-shirt and vote Salvini, well, then the more the merrier. I'm not a racist. So that's a position that actually threatens Italians. It threatens Europeans as well. It threatens other European nations, because another thing that Meloni and Salvini harp on about when they talk about immigration is that many times their main complaint is that Germany and France simply aren't taking their fair share. And I don't know about you, but I don't believe there is a fair share of Africans, of unvetted foreign peoples. It's not right to say, well, it doesn't matter how many come, or if they come in legally or illegally. What's important is that it's not just all Italy's responsibility to take them in and process them at immigration camps or refugee camps or whatever. We've got to share the load. So really what we advocate for is that France take in more, Germany take in more, etc. And when they achieve that objective, when, let's say, for example, some agreement is reached between, whether it was Salvini's Ministry of the Interior and Macron's Ministry of the Interior or whatever, and you get this, headline like France agrees to take in X percentage of migrants and whatever, share the load. They consider that a victory. They consider that fulfilling their word, fulfilling their promises. But in the end, that isn't helping the demographic situation of Europeans, and it's not helping the French in France. Like, again, if you want to look at this from the individual perspective of your own nation, you might say, yeah, it's based for the French to dump their unwanted Africans over into Italy, and it's based for the Italian nationalists in their perspective to get France to take in more of their quote unquote fair share, so that Italy isn't doing this alone, isn't taking in all these people alone and having to deal with all of the processing and all that kind of stuff and building migrant camps. But I think for people like us who want to get more radical about these things, none of this is the solution. And so, yeah, they can deliver nice speeches, but the actions count for much more. And let's talk about some of the actions then, with, in particular, Giorgia Meloni. And I think over the past few days, I've actually been quite pleased to see this. I think a lot of people aren't getting the wool pulled over their eyes this time. I looked at, for example, Paul Joseph Watson made a video about the Italian elections, and in the comments of his Telegram channel, everyone was saying, nah, this ain't it. She's not our girl. They were posting about all the sort of things that we're going to get into in a moment here. So I was really pleased to see that it looks like, not many of us are being fooled this time. And it's also worth noting that in the Italian election, only 63% or 69%, funny number, of the country even turned out to vote. And this was the lowest voter turnout in years, like record low. So I think even in Italy, I don't have my finger on the pulse, closely on the pulse, but I would say that I think in Italy, the overall feeling throughout the country is that we're kind of sick of all of these parties. No one is actually representing what we really want. And so very few Italians, comparative to other elections, turned out this year. And it's also worth knowing, not to get too carried away about, this wonderful election, 26% growth of Fratelli d'Italia, all these regions voted Fratelli d'Italia up and down the country. Okay, sure. But this is the national election. And if we look at what happened over the summer in regional elections, the center left actually made gains. So I have here some information just to share with you guys. If we look at, for example, in the north even, which is usually a center-right stronghold, the Democratic Party actually took mayoral seats, the Partito Democratico, the center-left of Italy. They actually took seats from right-wing mayors. So like in Verona, I think that had been a right-wing stronghold for over a decade. Well, now they have a leftist has been voted in. Actually, he's a former Italian football player. His name is Damiano Tomasi, and he's been voted in a pretty famously right-wing part of the country. And this happened elsewhere as well. The city of Parma, the city of Monza, Alessandria, these are all right-wing places in the north, and the north tends to be more right-wing than the south. But these are places where just over the summer, they switched and they went left-wing, and they voted in left-wing mayors in the regional elections. So a lot of times we look at national elections and we get carried away, whether, if the result goes positively from our perspective or negatively. But more often than not, it's the regional and the provincial elections where real victories and losses are found. And so as we get into the details of this recent national election, I really think that ultimately there aren't that many reasons to be getting carried away. And one of them is the results of the provincial local elections over the summer. Okay, so now getting back to Meloni herself, what is some of the bad? What are the things that people were talking about in Paul Joseph Watson's comments and all across Telegram and even in the YouTube comments of his video? Well, talking about actions speaking louder than words. For me, the first and foremost thing, and this is actually something that I've been talking about for 2 years. You can look at, if you search through some of my old videos and listen attentively over, the past 2.5 years, I mentioned Fratelli d'Italia by name on several occasions when I would talk about the so-called opposition parties who had let us down, whether it was Vox in Spain or Lega in Italy, Fratelli d'Italia in Italy, the Republicans in America. The parties that you expect to be anti-globalist, the parties that you expect to be the opposition. Well, when it came to things like lockdowns and mask mandates and mandatory vaccines or coerced vaccines, these parties did not oppose the ruling class, the ruling party. They did not oppose the globalist edicts coming out of international managerial institutions like the WHO, the UN, the European Union. And so in the case of Meloni, she was proudly in support of the Green Pass. And the Green Pass was and is Italy's and Europe's linking of your vaccine status with an app on your phone that you use, that you show to be able to go into a restaurant or keep your job or board a plane or whatever, go into the hospital to see a family member or a friend who's in hospital. And Meloni was proud of her and her party's support for the Green Pass and how she was expectant that the Green Pass would be implemented all over Europe and it would be our pathway to freedom. Well, that's rather Orwellian, especially for her to be saying this, for this, the supposed opposition to be saying that being coerced into getting a Pfizer jab so that you can get your green pass, so that you can be free, that is really, like, that is, perfect definition of Orwellian. And for me, that was like, okay, you can say, they're really just civic nationalists. They don't go far enough on protecting the Italian ethnos. They're okay with immigration as long as it's legal. Okay. Valid criticisms, but we can expect that. We're kind of used to that. The right wing is quite tepid. They're not going to go as far as we want these days. But for me, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. These are irredeemable, unforgivable positions to take. And I will never, ever forget that Lega and Salvini and Meloni and Fratelli d'Italia and Vox in Spain, they were all on board with the fundamental policies and edicts of the COVID situation. They made their respective masks with their party logos on them, and you could get yours to show your loyalty to the party. And at their rallies and at their shindigs, everyone's got their Lega mask or their Fratelli mask. Whereas I think an authentic opposition, an authentic anti-globalist party or group would be saying, to hell with these masks. They don't work. We're not going to use them. We're not going to participate in this charade. And to hell with the Green Pass. And it's worth knowing this, because I think as time went on and as there were massive protests, there was protests in Milano, there was protests in Genova, the working class, the truckers, the stevedores working on the docks and all these sort of things. They did sit-downs, sit-ins, they held protests, non-compliance, that sort of thing. And it got to the point where I think a lot of these politicians started changing their tune a bit. But we have the receipts. We know what they did. We know where they stood. And for me, that is a massive, massive red flag. Okay, so we talked about the civic nationalism aspect of them earlier and how they really just want to share the load with the rest of Europe. And if they come legally and adopt European values, it's fine. So we know that that's not good. Meloni is very pro-Israel. I just think, we're not going to get any change if we continue to have politicians that have to pledge allegiance to Israel. It's getting farcical at this point. Everywhere you go, everywhere you look, right-wing leaders have, gone to the Wailing Wall, put on the little small hat. In Meloni's case, there's this picture of her signing her name on a giant Israeli flag. And she had an interview with the Jerusalem Times saying that she believes 100% in the Israeli state and its right to exist, and we will always support it unconditionally. Unconditionally? What other country in the world gets unconditional support? Apart from, I guess, Ukraine these days. From Western states. It's just farcical. But it leads one to believe that the only way you can get power in this system is if you are approved. And so I think we're looking at a party and a party leader that have been approved. They've been allowed into these positions. And Meloni's most explicit form of nationalism, I think, is actually sort of like Catholic nationalism. One of the things that she said in her speech wasn't just sí alla familia, sí alla vita. It was also sí alla Chiesa, sí alla croce, yes to the church, yes to the cross. And if you've been, following me for some time, you know that I have some serious misgivings about Christianity. And I do believe that one of the things that Christianity has as a negative is that it allows its followers to either be duped into supporting Israel because they're God's chosen people, or it puts religion, it puts Catholicism above your ethnos, above your nation. So again, as long as the Africans convert to Catholicism or are Catholic, the more the merrier. We're all divine children of the one true God. If we all, follow the one true faith, what difference does it make? The color of our skin, as if these differences only go skin deep. So that's another problem. I had a schizo theory that I posted. One second here. And I talked about how I suspect that these right-wingers, quote unquote, of Fratelli d'Italia, of Lega, they've been allowed to take the reins at this particular moment because Mario Draghi just upped and walked away. No one really saw this coming. And I don't think men like Draghi walk away from power willingly. Not like that. So I think Draghi saw the writing on the wall and he realized that the future for Italy, the future for Europe in general is pretty bleak. There's no remedy. The inertia that's pushing us towards pretty bleak times is inevitable. It's unstoppable. So he just thought, you know what? I'm going to let someone else take all the blame. And so in come these upstarts. I mean, Fratelli d'Italia is it's not like a new party. They've been around for a few years now. But this has been just a huge success for them. Like the last elections, they were getting about 6% of the available vote. And now they've got like 27%. So it's been a huge boost for them. And I just have this feeling that no, they've been allowed in so they can, the way I put it in my post was they're going to try and stop the car crash only to find that the brakes have been cut. There is no stopping this. And then as the bodies climb out of the wreckage, well, who's to blame then? Who's to blame for this crash? Oh, it's Meloni, Salvini. So let's do away with these right-wing upstarts, these incompetent right-wingers, and let's get back to the status quo. Let's get back to the technocrats. Let's get back to the buonistas, which is like the Italian word for social justice types, progressives, right? Let's let them back in. They know what they're doing. They have the right thinking on everything. So kind of what we saw with Trump, it's this 4-year little blip of, really tepid nationalism, tepid America first. And then all of this skullduggery, the Russia hoax, obstacles at every turn. And then, it gets to the point where it's just too much. And now here's a pandemic. Whatever possible. They did whatever possible to make sure that Trump's kosher nationalism, as Reed Johnson has just put it in the chat, was basically never able to be fully implemented. And I think that's going to happen with Italy. Other things, talking about my schizo theory about how they've been allowed to take the reins, is that just 48 hours after Meloni's win, the front page story in La Repubblica, one of Italy's biggest newspapers, is this revelation that Meloni has made promises to Draghi. And basically, the promises are to uphold EU membership. There's going to be they're not going to be an anti-EU party. They're not going to rock the boat in the EU. They're not going to push for an Ital exit. And by the way, there is an element of Ital exit. I always prefer to call it ex Italia. It just rolls off the tongue better, ex Italia, and it works as a spelling as well. But it looks like my preference lost and everyone's going with Ital exit, which sounds ridiculous, but whatever. Anyway, what happened though with the this Ital exit is that within Fratelli Italia, there are members who want to, look for solutions to Italy's EU membership, want to leave. But they've been kind of excised by the party, and they weren't allowed to speak at party rallies. Just as Meloni has said that they worked hard to weed out anyone who might be a fascist sympathizer, a Mussolini sympathizer, anyone who's racist. They've all been weeded out. So again, I don't think, not to demoralize, not to always be the wet blanket. I know that I often play that role, but I just think you have to be realistic about these things. And when I say there's no political solution, what I mean in particular is that within this system, within this, parliamentary politics, partitocrazia, it's called in Italy. People put their party first. What's good for the party comes before what's good for the nation. What's good for investors, what's good for the lobbyists comes first. You're not going to change this system. The system is going to change you. I said this about Trump. Trump isn't going to drain the swamp. The swamp is going to drain him. And I don't think you can get to the point of having a 26% electoral win without making concessions to the system. Okay, you want power? Well, you got to weed out the explicitly quote unquote racist people, which basically are going to be those who say there is a difference between an Italian and an African. You cannot just wash up on Italian shores and now you're a European, now you're an Italian. We are different. We have the right to exist as the overwhelming majority in our own country. We have the right to protect our demographic majority. Those people aren't allowed in. They get weeded out. So these promises to Draghi involve, staying in the EU, or just not even causing any problems, not even rocking the boat. No divergence from NATO is another promise. So with regards to Ukraine, with regards to Russia, it's all be pro NATO. And, you can have your various thoughts on that. I'm not getting into that. I'm just saying that this party, this woman and her party, which is being considered so far right, and oh my gosh, this is going to be, where is Europe going? And oh, it's the second coming of Mussolini. It's just ridiculous to say these things. An example of how you have to toe the line if you want to be allowed power. Meloni and Berlusconi in particular had good relations with Putin, with Russia. Berlusconi even said that Putin was kind of forced into the Ukraine invasion, that Putin didn't really want to invade Ukraine, but there were certain bad actors in Russia that, forced his hand, or even kind of manipulated him into invading Ukraine, into taking that action. And within a matter of days, he was forced to retract that statement that seemed to be too kind to Putler. And so he had to give this whole statement about, no. We fully support Ukraine. We don't stand with Putin at all. He's persona non grata. We stand with NATO and our unconditional support for Ukraine. So there's very little room for divergence. If you want power, if you want to, be allowed a seat at the table. And so I don't think we're going to have solutions within a kind of system like this. Someone very rich is going to have to come from the outside. And like Clossington and I were talking about last stream, right-wing objectives are going to have to be made to look profitable and beneficial to the investor class. And I have no idea when that's going to happen. A moratorium on immigration isn't going to happen no matter who we vote in. It's going to happen when the investor class says, actually, yeah, that would be beneficial to us. That would be profitable to us. But with the current economic system based on human capital, can we expect that anytime soon? I'm not so sure. So that's what I mean when I say there is no political solution. Voting for parties that are described as being far right isn't going to be the solution, because it's just so easy to be considered far right these days. What is it exactly that makes people pull their hair out and say that Meloni is the second coming of Mussolini? What is it? She doesn't believe that men can be women and women can be men. Wow. That's the far right position these days. That's the extremist position that has people saying, "Ay, che vergogna. Oh paura. I'm so afraid. She's Mussolini. I'm ashamed to be an Italian." What? Because a national leader doesn't believe that men can just change into women and women can change into men. She's pro-nuclear traditional family. That's an extreme right position these days. That's all it takes. And so it's kind of interesting theater of the absurd that happens, where not only do you get the left freaking out about basic, traditional positions, normal positions. Yeah, men can't be women. Women can't be men. Nuclear family, good. Secure borders, good. But you also get the desperate right wing freaking out or getting a bit carried away, saying, finally, it's our girl. Finally, someone's really based, just for saying basic things, really basic things. Yeah, secure borders. That should be a no-brainer. But the situation is so absurd, and we've been pulled so far to the left, that the far right now is the center. And then also, apparently Meloni is a member of the Aspen Institute, which is a Washington, D.C. think tank full of the usual suspects, the usual globalist suspects. And she is apparently buddies with Tony Blair. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but don't get your hopes up. And then also, to be completely honest, this is Italy we're talking about. I don't even know if this government is going to, get started. This government could collapse in 5 months. You never know with Italian politics. The only thing consistent about Italian politics is the inconsistency. The only thing stable about it is the instability. And so, yeah, I would say don't get your hopes up too much about it. And again, I would say if you do want to look for political solutions, I think what Clossington and I were talking about is much more. It's not as glamorous. It's not going to capture the headlines, but it's the local level, it's the provincial level, regional elections, that sort of thing. Because what can Meloni do that's good? Okay, maybe there might be a push for some symbolic measures against the LGBT lobby. I think Italy has a lot bigger problems, and the people actually care about economic issues and border security issues, that they're not really that interested in trans athletes or gay marriage. And so I don't even know if it would be worthwhile for Meloni and the coalition government to try and undo gay marriage or gay adoption, or implement some policy that prevents trans athletes or something like that. At the end of the day, that would be kind of maybe like symbolic efforts, very, very small things, just sort of red meat to please the socially conservative people. But meanwhile, Italy's economic woes will continue. Their enslavement to the ECB and the euro will continue. The migrant boats will continue. I mean, remember that Salvini tried to stop the NGO boats. He really did, actually. I give him credit for that. He actually did try something. And he was put on trial for kidnapping, for sequestering the migrants on board by not allowing them to dock in Genova or Lampedusa. That was considered by activist judges and activist, pro-migrant lawyers, an act of kidnapping. And that actually was part of Salvini's downfall. He's back now, but that was part of his downfall, 5 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago. And so, I mean, there's so many international, supranational institutions that decide what a country like Italy can do. And as I mentioned also the other day, Italy's in a very bad position to play hardball with the EU, because they're in debt to the EU. They're in debt to German and French bailouts. Italy is the eye in pigs. And pretty much every public works project is funded with EU money. And even the EU, ostensibly, supposedly, the EU helps protect Italy's borders. Not very well. The EU supposedly protects Italy's waters. Not very well. But these are all things that if Italy tries to negotiate and say, look, we want more self-determination, more sovereignty, more respect, whatever, the EU can just laugh them off. And we heard Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, say that if Italy even, goes the quote unquote wrong direction, the EU has tools to fix the situation. So this is the problem with top-down global governance. This is the problem with these supranational institutions. And no, they wouldn't be based if our guys had control. These institutions were designed to be anti-nationalist. They were designed to quell nationalism and the even idea of nations. They're not going to ever be based. So again, just these kind of hopes, I really think are pipe dreams. So yeah, that's kind of my my in-depth take on Italy's elections, the results. I don't want to demoralize. I think yes, it's a step in the right direction. It's certainly nice to see that, those who did vote were willing to vote for a right-wing party, that certainly at least has been depicted as far right, fascist, that people were willing to say, you know what, fuck the media narrative. I like what they have to say. I don't care about the peer pressure telling me not to vote for them. I don't care about the liberal tears, the seething, the salt mines. I'm going to vote for this party. I like what they have to say. I like what they stand for. Now it's just a question of, can they even do much of what they say they believe in doing? And is much of what they say really even that good? Opposing the idea that a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man should just be the base standard. I don't think it's enough. Promoting the cross and, Catholic values, putting that over and above Italian blood, I think that's also not good enough. And, Italy has a debate on its hands right now. And hopefully one of the good things with having more right-wingers in the Senate, a national, right-wing coalition, is that hopefully this will put the brakes on what has been a campaign gaining lots of ground. And it is a campaign by left-wing activists, by pro-migrant NGOs, to change Italy's citizenship system from one that is based on inheritance and blood to one that is like the American system, where anyone who is simply born on Italian territory is automatically an Italian. This is what causes the phenomenon of anchor babies in the United States. Migrants just run into the United States or, U.S. territory, could be an embassy, drop out a baby. Now that baby is 100% an American. It's 100% an American citizen. And of course, you can't separate children from their parents. So, the parents have to be allowed to stay in America because you can't separate them from their American child. And so if the left wing and these NGOs and these activists get what they want, all the Africans who have come into Italy and fuck like rabbits, all of their children will be Italian citizens at the moment of birth. That's horrible. That will destroy Italy more than anything that's been destroying it so far. So, that's what I hope a right-wing government would, be useful for, stopping that sort of thing from happening. But if Meloni is proud, if she's, giving interviews to the Jerusalem Times saying that she's proud to have weeded out anyone who had connections to, Italy's old fascist government days, people say that Fratelli Italia is the inheritor of, Italy's fascist government, that it's got ties to Mussolini and ties to fascism. Bullshit. They've all been cleared out. And she's cleared anyone who's expressed any sort of quote unquote racist opinion. So I don't even know if I can trust her and her party and this coalition government to simply say, no, Italian citizenship is and always will be based on blood. You are Italian because your parents are Italian. You're an Italian because your grandparents were Italian. It's passed on and inherited through the blood. And this is, by the way, the system that the vast majority of countries use all over the world. Very few countries have the American magic dirt system. But of course, we're seeing NGOs pushing for the adoption of the American system because it is the perfect globalist system. The other day, I popped into Twitter and immediately realized why I hate it so much, because I saw someone responding in a tweet that had basically said something like, one of the most nefarious things about living under the globalist regime is this idea that it's somehow extremist to believe that Swedes should be the majority in Sweden. Italians should be the majority in Italy. The Germans should be the majority in Germany. That this is now an extremist, horrible, racist position is one of the most nefarious aspects of living under this globalist regime. And in the response to that tweet, there's some, woman, shitlib, saying, well, what is a European if not just a person living in Europe? All these people that come now to live in Europe, aren't they just as European as us now? And of course, the response was like, no, obviously, just like a German living in China is not now a Chinaman. But this idea that you just living in the country makes you living in a territorial area, living within the confines of some arbitrarily drawn borders on a map, makes you one of the nation, one of the ethnos. Bullshit. And I cannot believe that we are still talking about this. It's so tiresome. And I cannot believe that it would be considered, so taboo for someone in a right-wing government to say Italy is for the Italians. And that's basically what, the so-called racists in Italy are saying. So again, it's so easy to be considered far right these days. It's so easy to be called a racist and get excised from even a right-wing party that I just think, electoral politics isn't where we're going to see a lot of, change. And to be honest, I don't usually talk about electoral politics. I leave that for the Jews at the Daily Wire or, Nick Fuentes to ramble on about. So I'm going to end it there. Let's go to some stories that caught my attention over the week, and then we'll get into your guys' questions and comments. We will open up the lines. You guys can call in. And of course, you can also send super chats if you want. Let me check and see. I'll put the link to the super chats again in the chat if you're so inclined to send one. And you can talk about anything you want. What are your thoughts on the Italian election? What's on your mind regarding other things? But first, I wanted to talk about some interesting stories that caught my eye. And this first one comes out of Spain. And it's about chemtrails, more or less. So let me just pull this up here. So this is in Spanish, but I'll translate for you guys. So this happened in the province of Huelva and in the town of Rio Tinto. And what happened is that the town hall of Rio Tinto, this little city, little town, they discovered that a company called Organic Citrus was, this is quoting from the article in Diario de Huelva, that this company called Organic Citrus was, quote unquote, bombarding the clouds with chemical products in order to impede rain. And we know that this technology exists. We know that China, for example, has experimented with technology like this. Bill Gates has has invested in technology like this. And so, we know that they try to, usually when this kind of stuff appears in the news, it's usually in a positive light, like, weather manipulation technology to provoke rain so that we can end drought, we can end famine and, feed all the Africans or whatever. Well, in this case, they used it to stop rain. And going on. It's an official bulletin. We'll get into those. So basically, this it's an official announcement from the town hall, town council, and the city council basically said that this was completely, impermissible, out of line. Let's see. They said that it was a highly dangerous practice for our neighbors and for the vicinity, for the environment, highly, highly damaging, highly dangerous. And so this is just one example. And I have a lot of acquaintances and friends who work in agriculture. And I was speaking to them over the summer when there was that heat wave. And, it's quite normal, especially in countries like Spain, south of Spain, countries like Italy, that during the summer, we passed almost the entire summer with no rain. That's normal. But this particular summer was really hot and there was no rainfall. And so it was really difficult for people working in agriculture. The grape harvest was really bad, very low. The soil very dry. And that requires the use of more chemical fertilizer to, try and get something out of the soil. So it's like a vicious cycle. And, I was thinking about the winds as well. There are winds like the Mistral, which starts in the Pyrenees and goes all the way down to, southern France and Provence. And it's this, really cold, powerful wind that you can even get it in the summer. And it's so crazy because you'll be in the south of France, warm summer days, and all of a sudden the Mistral comes. And it's this hugely powerful, cold wind that blows your shirt off your body. It's so powerful and it's very cold. And it comes all the way from the Pyrenees. Or what happens, at least, once every 2 years here in Andalusia, we get these powerful winds coming from the Sahara Desert, and they carry with them sand from the desert, and they cover everything in this red dust, this red sandy dust. And it's coming from the Sahara Desert, it's coming from miles away. And so thinking about that makes me think, these chemicals that are being sprayed into the skies to stop rainfall, well, did they not get swept up in the winds and spread all over? You can't really centralize something like that. If you're spraying highly powerful, chemical products that prohibit rainfall, impede rainfall, and you think that's going to just stay localized in one area, I don't think that is possible. The wind will carry that elsewhere. And so I wonder if that had a role to play in the months that we passed with no rain. And it's not just in this town of Rio Tinto, and it's not just this private company. If a private company is doing this, imagine what the government can do. And in the case of the Spanish government, they are doing this too. And it's confirmed in official government Boletín Oficial del Estado, official state memos, I guess you would call these, or communications. And so we know that the Comunidad de Valencia, they've been using chemical products, toxic metal products. They've been spraying them in the skies. And in the case of Valencia, it was, justified as a measure to promote tourism, to maintain the tourist economy. So what they would do is that they would spray all these chemicals into the sky so that, again, rainfall would be avoided, sunny days would be continued, and people would go to the to the Valencia beaches, and the tourist economy would continue to thrive. There's even an official bulletin from the Comunidad of Madrid where the government acknowledges that they've acquired technology to create artificial snowfall. So I mean, we are in that Tesla world, man-made horrors beyond your imagination. And so I've posted stuff about this before and got the usual, oh, that's schizo, conspiratard stuff. But really, I encourage you to look into this. It's not conspiracy theory. It's not tinfoil hat stuff. This is going on. This is really happening. And I don't post these stories to, to get a seat at the table with Alex Jones or something. I post stuff that I know is confirmed or that is food for thought. And in the case of these things, this is confirmed. This company, Organic Citrus, interesting name too, Organic Citrus, as they bombard the clouds with toxic chemicals. There's your organic, farming. And I even go on. I've got it's all in Spanish. I'll have to translate it on the fly for you guys. But we have here, Pedro Sanchez authorized the use of chemtrails by the armed forces to fumigate the skies. Particularly, this happened during COVID. They fumigated the skies with chemical descontaminantes, decontaminating chemicals, and biocidas. So pesticides, herbicides, or germicides were sprayed all through the skies under the justification that it was to stop COVID. Just thought COVID was the justification for everything. So yeah, that's totally confirmed. But this even goes back as far as 2015, and that's when the member of the European Parliament, or a Eurodiputado, so like a European congressman, Ramon Tremosa, he announced that 4 workers of the State Meteorological Agency have confessed that they were using airplanes to disperse, to distribute, to spray, I guess, in the atmosphere, dióxido de plomo. Plomo is lead. So lead dioxide. I guess I'll have to look up what that refers to. But yeah, literally it's lead dioxide. So that's being sprayed into the Spanish skies. This isn't conspiracy stuff. I was an unbeliever about these things. I thought it was, crazy tinfoil hat people. There's no way that that's real. But something's happened in the timeline. I don't know if it's the Large Hadron Collider or something, but these things are now just, happening and openly admitted. It's no longer a conspiracy that you don't have to go digging into some dark corners of the interwebs and conspiracy forums. They're just saying it. The official government documents are confirming this. So, and in the case of what happened in that town of Rio Tinto, the private sector is getting involved, and then it's the local town council that has to step in and say, actually, no, this is terrible. What are you guys doing? So that is something that that caught my attention this week. And the other thing, before we get to your guys' questions and comments, the other thing that I saw that was really interesting, kind of again in the category of schizo stuff. I use that term jokingly because I don't think it's schizo. I think it's just, speculating and thinking and using your brain and looking at different things that are happening and trying to piece stuff together. But I saw this interesting bit of news regarding religion. So this happened at the 7th Congress, the 7th World Religions Congress of the Human Fraternity. And a document created by Pope Francis and Mohammed bin Zayed was adopted at this Congress of the Human Fraternity. The story that I'm reading was published on the 17th of September, but I don't know exactly when this Congress took place. But basically, it is a further unification, globalization of Christianity and Islam, and by extension, Judaism. So it's the Abrahamic faiths, the people of the book, getting ever closer. And this is prophesied in many fields. It's even prophesied even in the Bible, but it's certainly a part of Zionist prophecy that all of the religions will unite. Israel will become the seat of the law. From Israel, the law shall be given. Israel will be like the global mediator, and there's even rabbinical opinion that Christ will be recognized as a Messiah, and it's part of global religion, and also talking about prophecy and things like that. This is also in line with the changing of the age. So we are either coming out of or have already left the age of Pisces, and the symbol of Pisces is the fish, just as it is the symbol of Christ. That's why. So we're kind of, you could say, coming out of the age of Christ, and the Christ figure is probably going to be either understood in a more universalist way, or even kind of phased out. And we're going to come into the age of Aquarius, which is this age of enlightenment and cooperation and communication and universal brotherhood. And so when I see something like this, the 7th World Congress of the Human Fraternity, and basically a further union of Christianity and Islam. This particular article calls it Chrislam, as the official one world religion. And this is a Christian website, so they're not all happy about this. They're very wary of what's going on. They're not happy. If you read it, the tone is very dissatisfied. But I think it's actually just in lockstep with what the powers that be have in mind for the future. It could also just be, a fundamental and necessary part of the changing of the age. It's not really in anyone's hands. These things are just going to happen because, the universe wants it to happen this way, just as, Christ was the leading figure of the age of Pisces. War was the characteristic of the age of Aries. That was the age of empire and expansion and war and, vital barbarism. So these ages do have their characteristics. And I think, what might kind of upset the Christians is that that's kind of the ultimate goal, though, of, Christianity. Is, it's the ultimate prophecy in the book of Revelation. Every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that, the Messiah is Lord, and he is one and the same with Yahweh. So that's the God of Israel. So that was just another thing that caught my attention. And in my opinion, the best way to resist that is to just, again, the same way to resist the EU, the same way to resist globalization in general is to promote and celebrate and maintain as much of your own ethnic traditions and culture, religion even, and of course, genetics as possible. So yeah, that was just some stuff that caught my mind, caught my attention this week. All right, so let's get your guys' thoughts. Before I check the calls, if you want to call, just ask to be unmuted. You can also send super chats at the Entropy link. And actually, let me repost that again. And of course, I'll also have my eye on the group chat here if you guys want to send a message there. Let me just forward this to the chat. There you go. And that there's the link there. But before I get your calls, your questions and comments, someone the other day asked if I would share my thoughts on getting over a sugar addiction. So let's talk about that. First of all, I would say if you want to get over a sugar addiction, let me just check to make sure that person who asked the question is here. I hope he is. Or she. Could be a she. You never know. It doesn't look like he's in the chat today. But anyway, we are recording, so hopefully he'll catch this later. So I would say if you want to get over any addiction, really, I'm not the best person to ask because I've never had a problem with addiction. I used to smoke. Then one day I said, I don't want to smoke anymore. Why am I doing this? And so I stopped smoking. And I couldn't really tell you what a craving feels like. And I used to smoke a lot, especially when I was working as a bartender, as a cook. You know, you just, any chance you could get to relax and have a cigarette was taken. But I just didn't want to do it anymore. And so I stopped. I used to drink a lot. And then one day I just decided I don't want to drink anymore. I'm drinking too much. And I want to reduce and even, completely eliminate drinking from my life. And so, yeah, I'll go weeks and weeks without drinking alcohol. And then maybe, every now and again, I'll buy a bottle of wine or something or have a beer. But alcohol is definitely not part of my life like it used to be. And I couldn't tell you what it feels like to crave it. But what worked for me, what motivated me to want to quit smoking or what motivated me to give up drinking, so much was lifestyle. So I think from my perspective on this, before you even think about eliminating a product or a bad habit, you need to really get radical about your lifestyle. And so if you want to get over a bad habit, you need to introduce good habits. And so one of the reasons why I started to think about giving up smoking and then ultimately do it, or giving up drinking and then ultimately doing it, was because I was, taking up weightlifting and training, and I've always liked doing lots of sport. And the more you train, the more you go to the gym or the more you take up a sport and are serious about it. I'm not talking about playing tennis with the old man, once a month or something, or going for a walk around the block. I'm talking about really taking up a training regimen or, joining a sports team or a tennis club where you're going to be playing often, and you have to be in good shape if you want to do it well. Well, your body is going to start craving healthy things. Your body will start craving healthy things. And if you pay attention to it, you'll know what it's craving. You'll know that, if you're feeling hungry, even though you've eaten, maybe you need to eat more carbs and feel a bit more full. And carbs are good for you, especially if you're training, especially if you're doing sport. You need to get some carbs. It's okay. You can say, oh, I know someone who's on the carnivore diet and they don't take carbs and they're great. Okay, well, for every anecdote of that person being, succeeding that way, there's other anecdotes of people utterly failing that way, trying to just do carnivore and either, gain muscle mass or strength or, be a high level athlete. That said, I recommend always, higher protein intake, especially, natural sources of protein. Of course, that's great. Or you can even feel that you might need, that you're having a bit of like a fructose deficiency. So you pay attention to your body and you go out and, okay, I need to eat an apple. I need to eat a mango or something, and then you'll realize that, oh, your body's actually craving things, but in a healthy way. And you'll find healthy sources to quench what your body is craving, instead of, your body saying, I need nicotine or I need alcohol. So if you start changing your lifestyle, first of all, as the starting point, I think that's really the best thing you can do. And if you take that lifestyle change seriously, if you take your sport seriously, if you take your weightlifting seriously, you will want to skip the junk food. Because eating the junk food or smoking the cigarettes or drinking the alcohol won't allow you to train effectively, to play your sport effectively, while your teammates will be running around the pitch or, on the tennis court, full of energy. If you don't give up your cigarettes, you'll be letting the team down because you'll be, wheezing on the sidelines or something. Or you'll be, gassed at the end of the first set. So, you'll start wanting to nourish yourself with healthy foods. You'll start wanting to eliminate the unhealthy stuff because it's holding you back. So that would be one thing to start with. That's what I would say is the fundamental, cornerstone. The next fundamental cornerstone would be you have to learn to cook. If you're struggling with getting over a junk food addiction, a sugar addiction, or whatever, you need to learn to cook your own food. I don't know how many of you out there cook for yourselves. I'm always surprised to see how many people don't know how to cook. They don't cook for themselves. They order out, they get takeaways. Because for me, I've always cooked, on my Italian side, my family's full of chefs. My grandmother was a chef in I think it's like a 2-star restaurant. 3 stars is the highest you can get. So pretty good restaurant. And I didn't grow up eating lots of takeaways. I think it was probably just because it's too expensive. So we always just had home cooked meals. And, when I moved out to live my own, I just carried on doing that. I've always cooked for myself. And it actually became a hobby of mine, and I enjoyed cooking and creating my own recipes and buying recipe books. And so you need to learn to cook, because all of the pre-made foods, pre-packaged foods, TV dinners, processed foods, they're full of sugar. And, sugar in and of itself isn't bad, just like carbs aren't bad. Fat isn't bad. It depends where you're getting it from. The carbohydrates that come from a sweet potato are good. It's like a sweet potato is one of the best sources for healthy carbs. Honey is an excellent source of, quote unquote, sugar, fructose, sweetness. Butter, lard, these are natural animal products, natural animal fats. They are great sources of healthy fats. A lot of the things that we've been told to avoid or have been told are unhealthy, the food pyramid, the American food pyramid, it's all a joke. In fact, it's not even a joke. It's genuinely malevolent. It's genuinely unhealthy. All of that, the base of the food pyramid is all those grains and bread, and that's not a good base for your diet. And then the top of the pyramid is just a little bit of protein. No, flip that pyramid. Eat much more protein and much fewer grains. Because there's a lot of sugar even in white bread, frozen pizzas, all those things. If you drink coffee and you put sugar in your coffee, try putting honey in your coffee. I did that for a while, and then actually now I don't even take sugar in my coffee at all. I just drink it black. Well, actually, really, I don't drink. I drink espresso. I always try and get my hands on Lavazza coffee, and I just make myself espresso, and I down that quickly, and there you go. And I usually only have coffee. I don't even have it every day. I might have it in the morning, about an hour after I wake up. It's not the first thing I go to. It's got to get my coffee. I've never really wanted to be like a coffee dependent person. And if I have coffee anytime after 5 in the evening, I can't sleep. So I try not to have it in the evening. So yeah, learn to cook and eat single ingredient meals. So that means meat, a source of carbohydrates, a fruit, right? Nothing like, don't buy things that have lots of ingredients on them. They come in brightly colored packages. You can't even pronounce half the things that are listed in the ingredients. None of that stuff. Because I think that's actually where people's addiction to sugar is coming from. It's coming from the hidden, sort of like latent presence of sugar, which is in so much junk food. So basically, buy your food as a single ingredient. I'm going to buy meat, not, a tin of chili with some ground beef in it, mincemeat in it, whatever you want to call it. Not, a frozen pizza with different stuff on it. No, I'm going to buy, some steak or, chicken breast or something. Okay, there's your protein. Then a carbohydrate. Okay, sweet potato. Or I've been eating buckwheat pasta for the past couple of months. Well, maybe actually almost a year now. Doesn't taste good. Okay. But my priority is I'm always on the hunt for healthy carbohydrates. So my priority is to find healthy carbohydrates, and I can, invent something in the kitchen to make it taste a bit better, a sauce or something. Because my priority is to, gain some more muscle mass, gain some more strength, get to a certain objective that I have in mind, and I need to increase the amount of carbs that I'm eating. So I need to find a healthy source of carbs. So sweet potato, buckwheat pasta, rice, or fruit. Fruit is a great source of carbohydrates. Taste-wise, it's always better to get fruit that's in season, fruit that comes, from your own garden if you can have one, or from someone else's local garden. Usually it's going to taste way better than anything you get in a supermarket. So like for me, a typical meal is, some meat, eggs, mango or a papaya or a sweet potato, yogurt, fresh milk. I can get my hands on raw milk, but it's in Spain it's not illegal to get unpasteurized milk. It's just called leche fresca, fresh milk, but it's not completely raw. It's been like slightly treated, but it tastes really good. It's probably the closest thing you can get to raw milk without having to, go directly to a milk farmer and like ask them for raw milk. But it's not illegal in Spain anyway, so I could get it. It's just not in my area, and I'm not gonna, go out of my way to find it. So that's basically, when I think of food, it's just I need fuel, I need energy. Okay, and I need protein, carbs, and if you want to eat, veg, throw some veg in there. So your typical plate will look like a protein, a carb, and a veg. And then, if you have a hankering, a craving for sweet stuff, well, use honey. That would be my recommendation. So that would be my advice about getting over sugar in your diet, your day-to-day life. As far as the addiction part, feeling cravings and stuff like that, well, that's going to be something that you have to do through your own willpower. I'm not a fan of supplements or placebos or, take this, take this medication or something. It makes you feel like you're getting sugar, or it makes you feel like you're getting your nicotine. Just go try it cold turkey. Just do it. Again, though, I can't really empathize with someone doing it that way and feeling like it's really difficult, because it's never been difficult for me. But I think that would be the healthiest way, is just tell yourself, look, I don't want to be consuming so much sugar. Okay, well, eliminate processed foods. Eliminate food that comes in brightly colored packages. Introduce a healthy lifestyle change, taking up a sport, training in the gym. And then if you want something sweet, go for honey. And I think that's it. That would be my advice for you there. Okay, so let's throw it to you guys. If you got any questions or comments, if you want to call in or write in, now is the time. We'll go for, like I said, I knew this one was going to go over the 2-hour mark. So, well, actually, no, we're coming up only to 10 o'clock. So we'll go for about another half an hour or so, taking in your guys' calls or written questions. I saw one in the chat. Hold on, let me get there. Okay, here it was. Orthodoxy Proxy says, "Hey Pox, do you consider South America to be in line with Jared Taylor's definition of white?" Well, South America in its entirety, no. I would not say that South America is white. But in countries like Argentina, you certainly have a white population. You have a population of people that are definitely, descended of the Europeans. One of the memes that I've seen spread, that I've seen go viral anytime there is a World Cup. Well, I guess the last World Cup, 2018. But anytime there's like an international football tournament, I've seen this meme that gets spread by libtards. They think it's a meme that's expressing something positive, or it's justifying their worldview, and it's a picture of the Argentinian starting 11 and a picture of the French starting 11, and all the Argentinians are white, ginger, blonde, and all the French are African, sub-Saharan African. And the libtards spread this meme. I remember in 2018 when I saw it, and I saw my, some libtard, fucking horrible. Like one of the people that spread it was an actual Amnesty International activist. And, they were basically spreading it to sort of say that look how immigration changes. This South American team looks more white than this European team. We're all just one big global race. There's no race. We're all the same. You can be black and Argentine and French, and you can be white and Argentinian. Argentina looks more quote unquote European. What does it even mean to be a European? Than the so-called French European team. And I remember when I saw that, and I just commented, "Oh, look, demographic replacement. I thought that was a conspiracy theory." And of course, they all started hating me, but I don't care. So yeah, you definitely get parts of South America where there's a significant presence in the gene pool of European genetics. Is the question like, would they be a part of our cause? Would we be right to, find common cause with them, with South Americans? I think we can take help wherever we can get it. And sometimes there are South American countries that are going through the same things that we are going through as far as, degeneracy. Talking of Argentina, there was a huge pro-abortion activist movement there. If I recall correctly, they got what they wanted. Interestingly, the South American Catholic Church is under heavy fire lately by degenerates and anti-Catholic activists, cultural revolutionary types. Type of people who stand outside a cathedral and shoving crucifixes up their anuses or something like that. Degenerate gay pride parades are commonplace now in South America. So I think culturally, in the culture wars, there's definitely common cause. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't have my ear to the ground as far as South American demographics or anything like that. I don't know if the people of European stock in South America are concerned with ethno-nationalism or carving out a place for Argentinians of European descent or Brazilians of European descent. And speaking of Brazil, I know that in Brazil, they kind of want, traditionally, the Brazilian people have wanted reverse demographic change. So here in Europe, it's about turning us all brown. Whereas in Brazil, it was actually kind of the objective, the goal. It was seen as a positive to turn everyone white, to get those brown Brazilian Amazonians to marry a European, marry a Portuguese, marry a Spaniard, marry an Italian, marry a German, and within the next generation get another European in the family. Their little mocha child will then marry another white European, and then you get all of that brownness filtered out, and now you have lovely white children for ad infinitum. But yeah, I think the other day I listened to the German Pointer. He did an interview with this guy in Chile, and it was a really interesting interview. Again, it was interesting to hear that many of the things we're going through in Europe is happening in Chile. Global Homo has us all in their sights. And so, Chile, I think, is another country with a pretty significant European stock population. And I think if there's people there who are willing to signal boost the cause for ethno-nationalism, the cause for, people to have a tribe, have ethnic bonds, if there's a cause of, if there's people out there who want to signal boost the validity and the veracity of human biodiversity, I think yeah, we can definitely find common cause with them and definitely learn from them and take whatever help they can offer us. Sure. And I would say yes. Any like Lionel Messi, for example, he's Italian. You know, he could have played for the Italian national team because his grandparents or his grandfather was Italian, and if you go, his grandfather being Italian would have been enough for him to just go to an Italian embassy and say, "Look, I don't need to naturalize. I don't need to live in Italy for 6 years. I don't need to go through much red tape. My grandfather is Italian. Here's his Italian birth certificate. Here's his Italian citizenship, whatever status says he's an ethnic Italian." That would have been enough for Lionel Messi to put on the blue shirt and play for the Italian national team. It's sort of passport nationalism, I guess, sort of, football nationalism. But, look at many Argentinians. There's others that are, blonde and blue-eyed. Yeah, they're basically just like the white North American. It's a different continent, but the blood is the same. So to answer the question as basically as possible, yeah, I would say that some South Americans, those of European descent, can be considered white. But that is why I tend not to use the term white, because I talk more about, the importance of the European peoples. And I prefer to say that I'm pro-European, I'm a European ethno-nationalist, that sort of thing. Because once you get into countries like the United States or Brazil and South America, then it's all so mixed up that you have to use the term white, because even the Europeans have been mixed up. Tom says, I'm pretty sure that Italian citizenship rules are how so many Brazilians get into Europe. Yeah. In the case of Italy, they're called oriundi. And they're players from South America, usually Brazil or Argentina, that have Italian ancestry. And they find that Italian ancestry and they decide, look, I'm a decent footballer, but I don't know if the Argentina team or the Brazil team is going to call me up. But Italy will, so I'll go play for them. And then there's been another case too, where a South American, a Brazilian in particular in this one case, he played in the Italian league, football league, for several years, and he lived at a continuous address for 6 or 7 years in Italy, and that's enough for you to naturalize. And he had never played for Brazil, so he naturalized, got a passport, and ended up being called up to the Italian team. I'm not in favor of these things. I think it's a joke and a shame, really. But that Brazilian in particular, his name was Amauri. And I would say that he probably has more European in him than native South American. He was, a typical looking, European looking guy. All right, let me look at the phones here. If anyone wants to call in, you can as well. Have a little chat. Anything on your mind, anything you want to talk, really. If you want to talk about the topics mentioned today or something else, I usually don't mind. Last week, Clossington and I talked a lot about something that I had no plan to talk about at all, but it was a really interesting conversation. I think people who listened were really, really happy with it. All right. Here we have Tulf. All right, Tulf, you are unmuted. What's on your mind? Are you there? Don't know if you can hear. Oh, you just disappeared. Okay. Maybe he got nervous. Okay, back. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but do you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, you might want to turn up your volume a bit more. I'll see if I can turn you up, because I can hear you, but very quietly.
Can you hear me better now?
Yep, I can hear you now.
I hear you also better. Or anyway, so first of all, where can I find the chat? Because I tried for the last several streams and I couldn't find the chat. I know it's a boomer question, but
Oh no, that's fine. I'm a boomer too when it comes to tech. All right, let me get to you. If you go into Telegram and you just type all one word, Pox Populi Chat, it's all together, all
okay.
lowercase.
I know now. Okay, okay.
You should
I
get the
didn't
chat.
know. Okay,
The
okay.
picture of the channel, it's a different picture too to help people figure it out. The picture of the channel is the blue sky with the olive trees, and the picture for the chat is an Italian hillside. So you can find the chat there, okay?
I joined. Okay, okay, okay. So, can I ask more questions or do I?
Yeah, sure. This is sort of like the call-in part. It's like I don't know if you've ever. A lot of us, maybe it depends how old you are, but I'm sure now that there's like a whole generation of people who've never, grown up with radio shows, radio call-in shows, listening to the radio. But this is kind of like an old school call-in show on the radio, so you can call in and have your say, whatever's on your mind.
Oh, okay, okay. I'll get to that. I wanted actually to call last week, but you did quite a ramble with rumble. Excuse my accent. With Closington, and I couldn't interrupt that. Anyway, so we had a back and forth a few days ago on your page, on your Telegram page about the European Union. I won't get into that because I will get fucked by your audience.
No, don't worry about it.
No, I'm not particularly pro EU, but we can talk about that later. I wanted to ask another question. By the way, about South America, because it's in my mind. I saw recently in our Romanian newspapers that Colombia, if I recall well, or it was Cuba. First of all, they want to legalize gay marriage.
Cuba. Mm-hmm.
Yes, if I recall well. And there was something about Colombia. It was something with the horse, PM, or how they're called there. Like he joined the the meeting in the parliament with the horse or something like that. Anyway, so first question: do you think Europe is heading the way of South America, where multiculturalism reigns and also crime? We are already there,
Yeah.
somewhat, but they're way in front of us. But I think we will get there. What do you
I
think?
think, with I think we're turning into America, actually. I think we're turning into North America in
No,
Europe.
no,
I
North
think,
America. Sorry.
yeah, with the prevalence of rap music I see everywhere. Although, interestingly, talking about music in South America, reggaeton is fucking everywhere in Spain and Italy. And I don't know what it's like in, England or France. Certainly when I was in France, I didn't hear reggaeton. But for the past 6 years that I've been living in Spain, all I hear is reggaeton. And the vast majority of it is coming from South American, reggaeton. I'm not going to call them artists, singers, or songwriters, whatever, reggaeton makers. And they're all from Colombia or Brazil or Cuba or, El Salvador. And, they make this, it is pure ooga booga music. Like, it's this basic drum beat that is the same for every song, has to have this basic drum beat. And then it's all about, big asses, twerking. All the lyrics are, highly sexually charged. They're never about anything else except sex and, material wealth and stuff. And this is what is, pumped out everywhere in a European country. And in two European countries that I know of, at least, it's everywhere in Spain, and it's also very popular in Italy. So I guess that's a South Americanization of Europe. But demographically, it's like, I think we're just becoming more like the United States, wherein you find people from everywhere. So if you go to a country like France, if you go to a country like Germany, if you go to Italy, you're going to find people from Africa, but also from Pakistan, from China, from India, from Azerbaijan. You know, you just have this huge influx of people everywhere. And again, like I was talking about earlier, if they stay long enough, if they get their paperwork in order, they get a passport, and hey, now I'm just as French as Gerard Depardieu. I'm just as Italian as Enzo Ferrari. You know, it's like it's crazy, and that is quintessentially American for the past, you know, I guess since 1965, right?
65.
That was the date that they did the Immigration Act.
Okay. I didn't know the exact year. I know about it, but I didn't know the exact year. Okay. Anyway, so that were my thoughts. I think we are heading towards the way of South America, so multicultural, uh, drug ridden with
Mm.
I don't you know what I'm talking about. So a democracy, because they have a democracy. I was stunned. They are fighting for gay rights and stuff like that in a country that even in Mexico, I don't know what kind of rights do the LGBT people have there, but they are fighting for their rights. And crime is in the street in the noon at the noon or
Mm.
anytime you so
Well, thanks for the call in. And I was actually thinking about this. I was, you know, debating whether or not I would make this one of the topics of, you know, the first part of the show. But yeah, Cuba just legalized gay marriage, and you know, Cuba is a country that is heaving under the weight of all sorts of economic problems for various reasons and for a long time. Um, And I think that the reason why the left and the activists push, you know, gay rights, gay marriage, queer stuff, trans stuff, is because it's it's the new way of keeping a hold on the youth. If you look at if you talk to young people, if you have any interaction with young people, I'm talking like Zoomers and younger, they are getting pretty red pilled. And they're pretty fed up with a lot of stuff. And I think this is because they spend a lot of time online. And, you know, we won the meme war of 2016. I think this is why it's important to make memes, share memes, and do online stuff, because it does get around, and it is our best way of having some influence in the culture, because we're not going to get into Hollywood, and we're not going to get into the music industry, and we're not going to get into the publishing houses, and we're certainly not going to get into academia. But we are active online, and this is, of course, why they're trying to, all over the world, all over America and the European Union, implement all sorts of online censorship, because this is where we're winning. And so you talk to a lot of young people, and they're not keen on immigration. They're kind of racist. You know, I'm talking about like normie teenagers, normie kids. They've been exposed at a young age to pretty based stuff in memes and, you know, online content, so that they've lost they don't have the sort of paradigms imposed on them that, you know, millennials have had and boomers certainly have had. But the one thing where these Zoomers and younger generations, where the one thing where they're totally like in agreement with the regime, with the cultural norms of the clown world day, is the gay stuff, is the trans stuff. And I'm talking about like Catholic kids that wear the Spanish red and gold bracelets on their wrist to show that they are, you know, proud Spanish nationalists, that they support the monarchy. I'm talking about kids who go to Catholic schools, good, they come from, decent middle class homes, and you can talk to them and they'll say pretty base things about immigration and all the moros who are coming up and invading and, coming into Spain and all that kind of stuff. But then we get to the subject of gays and trans in particular, and yeah, they're fine with it, and I think the reason why it's getting promoted so much is because the left always needs to have some sort of revolutionary position. They always need to have some sort of underdog position. And so now, to be trans is the new revolutionary thing. It's the new underdog. And of course, young people identify with that. And this is how the left is keeping their grip on future generations, keeping their grip on the youth. And so in a country like Cuba, you have people suffering all these economic problems. The country is, just another dysfunctional, South American, Caribbean country. But hey, don't worry about it. Don't pay attention to our failures and your poverty and all that stuff. So look, we passed gay marriage. Hooray! And of course, all of the libtards and the lefties and the homos clap like seals. Meanwhile, no one cares. No one else cares about this shit. And in particular, the conservative, your Cuban, Catholic religious person doesn't even want this at all, let alone, care about it. But hey, it's something that the government can do to say, look, we did this, so keep voting for us. And they can rely on the votes and the support of, younger generations who are getting a bit fed up with the current state of things. But hey, look, no, they support the gays and, they support the trans stuff. And that's the new rebellion. That's the new thing to be cool, is to be queer. So I think they're using that as a way to maintain power politically.
It may be so, but thing is, I mean the state of the society. So what I think, I don't know much about South America, but from what I have seen through news and through several TV shows, especially those about narcos and stuff like that, drugs, it's democratic, because you can call it. It's not like, I don't know, the Philippines or whatever country in Southeast Asia. I don't know, Thailand, perhaps. They have a king, and he's basically not that democratic. So it's a democratic state, but it's overrun by mafia and by killing in the streets and stuff like that. So this is what I mean. They have some kind of liberal democratic state with you can vote with all sorts of liberties, gay rights and stuff like that, but you also have corruption at the highest level and stuff like that. So this is the question. I didn't want to talk too much about this, but anyway, will Europe also get that that kind of society? That's because we will get a multiculturalism. There is no other way, at least for the coming future. So will it be like that? What do you think? Just a short answer, because I wanted to talk about something that is rather more important than this. But anyway.
Okay. No, I think I think the more multicultural we get, the more authoritarian the ruling class will get, and it has to be that way because multicultural societies don't function, and people are going to complain about the dysfunction. And the dysfunction is going to spill out into the streets like it recently did in cities across England. And so, yeah, I expect that the near future, it's not good. This is why, when people say such and such institution or such and such policy, whether it's a lockdown or a universal basic income, anything that is being devised and implemented by the current global ruling class, if you call yourself red pill, if you call yourself a dissident, and if you call yourself a nationalist, your default position should at the very least be suspicion. Because I think the future is one in which governments are going to be very authoritarian, because we are becoming more like the United States or a South American country, and they dysfunction because culture is downstream from race. And, there's a reason why Detroit went from being the Paris of the Midwest to now being a shithole. There's a reason why Argentina and Chile, the countries with significant European stock, tend to do better than Bolivia or Ecuador, So yeah, that would be my answer. Get armed, I guess, if you can. Stay with people of your kind. Have good connections with family and friends of your ethnic stock that you can, form a community with.
At the time, it's no need here in Eastern Europe, but we will get to that in a short time. I believe probably till 2030 we'll get there. So the next question is, I really don't understand why so much of or so many people in the dissident right are so pro-Russian. I know you said that you are neutral, but a lot of them are pro-Russian. That is a part of the discussion we had back and forth a few days ago. I don't know, there was a guy who was very pro-European Union. I only rumbled a bit about it, but we here in Eastern Europe don't have that positive perception of Russia and the Russian.
Really? What a surprise!
Yes, I don't know. I know some Hungarians, but we don't talk about politics anyway. But they are probably pro-Putin. I don't know. But I don't understand how the dissident right can be so pro-Putin, even if they say they are. I don't say it's your case, but many of them they say I just don't care. No, he just throws his youth like cannon fodder in the bombs or stuff like, and I don't understand his goal. What does he achieve? I mean, in 20 years, he shouldn't need one pistol to conquer Europe in 20 years. Why did he do that? I don't know, it's fucking surreal and unbelievable. It was totally unnecessary. I don't understand how you can go and fight in a war and die totally unnecessary. You just had to wait 15, 20 years or something like that. If you are pro-Russian, at least. I am not pro-Russian. I have nothing against the population, at least those that are anti-Putin and their leadership. But I don't understand why the Western dissident right is so.
Well, that question is easy to answer. The Western dissident right, excluding the potential that many leading voices on the pro-Russia side of online right-wing personalities are connected to Russia or financed by the Kremlin, excluding that potential. And I have reason to believe that in some cases it's true, but just your average dissident right-winger, I'm not surprised at all that they are, taking a default sort of positive pro-Russia, pro-Putin position, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and Putin is based. And this is something, that in February, when the invasion occurred, this was something that I quickly noticed and spoke out against, was all of the tradcaths and ortho bros spewing this narrative that Russia is a based Christian nationalist country that's going to cleanse the world of the Western degeneracy. and Putin takes care of his people, and it's a God-loving, God-fearing country as opposed to the decadent, satanic West and all this shit. And you had people like Lauren Vitsky and Nick Fuentes, and I could name lots of other names that were buying into this narrative and promoting this narrative. And this is one of the reasons why I have misgivings about Christianity, because if you put it first, it provides occasions in which you can get duped into believing false narratives. But I also think that propaganda comes from all sides, and I'm sure that Russia has been spreading anti-West propaganda. I'm sure that there are people who have some connection to Russia, and they've been pushing this meme in the right for the longest time that basically the West is just gay, tranny, hell, it's satanic and all this stuff, and so we need someone to come in and cleanse us, at least of our ruling class or something. So it's tilling the ground for the invader to be welcomed. It's tilling the ground for the West, for people in the West to welcome their liberators, right? We'll be welcomed as liberators. We're coming to save their children from being, transified or something. And so I think that is, well, in the first place, I think the idea that Russia is this based trad ortho-bro country coming to cleanse the world, I don't think that's true. And I don't think it factors at all into any of Russia's designs. They don't care. They're not waging a culture war. And there's gay shit going on in Russia too. And there's abortion and alcoholism. It's just different levels or different, extremities, I suppose. And so that's why you get people on the right taking a pretty pro-Russia stance. And again, it's the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So for many people on the right who aren't, perhaps mouthpieces for the Kremlin, they just hate the current, Western liberal ruling class, and with reason. So anything that's going to stick a finger in the eye of that group of people and their agenda is applauded. Anyone who does that is applauded. And I think that's fine. I think that's totally expected. It's a normal reaction. But I think that there's much more going on regarding this Russia-Ukraine conflict. And I've just always said that I'm not taking any of their sides because none of them take mine. Whether it's the Western powers, Ukraine itself, and Ukraine's government, the Zelensky government, or Russia. None of them have my interests at heart. None of them believe in anything that I believe in. None of them want to achieve anything I would like to see accomplished. So I'm not going to, vociferously support one or the other. I'm not going to make a public, I'm not going to post anything in support of one or, put my flag down on any particular side. Regarding the questions of why Putin did what he did or why didn't he just wait, we have to give him.
He hasn't lived the years. I don't know. He's in his 70s or something like that. Anyway, sorry.
Well, I just think that it wasn't really all his decision. Like I was mentioning earlier, Silvio Berlusconi said that he was forced into doing it, that he had, he was kind of manipulated into it. They forced his hand, people inside the Kremlin. Russia is full of Chabadnik Jews. People go back and forth about this all the time, which government is more Zog. And everyone's got, this is just like how you can lie with statistics. Everyone's got their own statistic. So everyone's got their screenshot or their article of Putin expelled the Jewish oligarchs. And then here comes everyone saying, no, look, he's got all these rabbis, he's got all these Chabadniks in his inner circle. And so you never have to remember too that you can very much argue that Ukraine is the aggressor, because this isn't just something that started in 2022, February of 2022. The violence on both sides has been going on for a long time. These countries have a long history of animosity towards each other and bad blood, but in particular since like 2014, that was when the Ukrainians were bombarding the disputed areas like the Donbass and all that sort of thing. And so the Russians can easily say, no, we're not the aggressor here. We are the ones trying to end aggression. And this is very much reminiscent of when Germany invaded Poland. People think that Germany invaded Poland out of an act of aggression, declaring war against the world. And if you look into what really happened, Germany went into Poland, Hitler's Germany went into Poland because ethnic Germans were being persecuted and killed and murdered in Poland. And the German Third Reich, the German Reich, could not tolerate that. And they even tried on several occasions to reach a peaceful truce and get the Polish state, I guess, or Poland, let's just call it Poland, to stop killing Germans. Oh no, have I lost my connection? Galileo's tongue says, is it me or has Pox lost connection? Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Anyway, I was just saying that, time is going to be very interesting to see how history gets remembered. And I remember, for example, in the January 6th stuff, I remember saying to friends and family, and I think I even made some posts about it, we are witnessing in real time how history can be rewritten. We saw a nonviolent, unarmed protest in real time, in rapid real time, get transformed by a media machine into an armed insurrection, terrorist, extremist movement. And I just remember saying to you, look, that's how you get your Holocaust narrative. That's how you get your Hitler's a madman narrative. That's how you get your, pick one, pick whatever historical narrative that we're not allowed to talk about or that we've been taught is a certain way, but really when you dig into it, it's totally different. And I'm not a neo-Nazi. I'm not even, there's some things about Hitler that I like. There's some things about, that time in history, what Germany tried to do that I like. But I also think, there's some shady stuff that was going on. There was some bad stuff that went on. And I don't agree with every, or even the majority of some of their, some policies. So I'm not saying this because I'm not trying to, do apologia for Hitler or Germany. But it's just, that's like the new religion is, Hitler bad, Germany bad, and here's why. And it's like, well, they invaded Poland and they wanted to conquer the world. Really? Or did they invade, quote unquote, Poland because Poland was persecuting Germans and they had a folk responsibility. They had a responsibility to their folk to end that persecution. So, that Russia could have felt like, Putin could have felt like they're at the end of their rope. They can't take this anymore. Okay, time to bring down the hammer on these pesky Ukrainians who keep, being a thorn in our side and keep causing aggression and violence against, quote unquote, our people, Russian people. And I also think that there is a Zionist agenda behind this. I think there is I think it goes hand in hand with Agenda 30. People don't like that. They think it's getting all schizo and stuff. But, when you have people like Larry Fink saying the war in Ukraine is accelerating the need for central bank digital currencies, or when you see that the war in Ukraine is fast tracking reset the table agenda, all these other things. And then when you look at things like the Belt and Road Initiative, the Israel pipeline into Europe, there's a lot of money interest as well, and power plays going on that wouldn't have been able to be achieved or be fast tracked if it wasn't for this war in Ukraine. And so when Berlusconi says, when he speaks candidly without thinking he's going to have to apologize for, giving his opinion, and he says, I think Putin was forced into this, I think what it means is that there are people in the Kremlin, Chabadniks, globalists, whatever, could be various factions that said, look, let's do this. Let's invade Ukraine. Let's kick it off. And they could whisper things about Russian nationalism or the multipolar world, or we have to take down the decadent West off its perch. And you can have all sorts of different reasons to justify it, argue for it, oppose it, whatever. But I think that ultimately, it's never about what they're telling us. And I think that the conflict in the Donbass, Ukrainian nationalism, or Russian expansionism, those are just surface area justifications or motives. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes.
Okay. Just wanted to check what the population in Donbass is. I don't know the demographics, or were at least in 2014. But I think they were majority Ukrainian. I may mistake there. I have make a mistake.
I think you're right, but there are Ukrainians who wanted to remain part of Russia or go back to being part of Russia or something like that. And I've seen that there's been a referendum in which it looks like all the results favored Russia in a referendum in these parts of Ukraine. They all, as far as I'm aware, I'm really not paying too much attention to this. It's just so out of my hands, it's like, and I'm not a geopolitical person. I don't have any particular insight to offer anyone, so I'm just not even really paying attention to it. But I saw something about the referendum and all of the regions that are kind of like quote unquote disputed. Apparently the results of the referendum were we want to be Russia, if I recall correctly.
I don't know about that, but I can give you a name of a channel. Perhaps you heard about it. I don't know. Ivan the Terrible. No, not the Terrible. Sorry, Ivan the Hidden.
Yes.
He did a good video about a week ago.
I think you're talking about the one I just saw too. And then Charlemagne did a write up about it on his Substack.
I didn't see that, but I've seen Ivan's video. It was a very good take. It was, from my point of view, as an Eastern European, it was fairly neutral, but anyway, a bit biased towards Ukraine, of course. But I think I don't say that you should ask him or something like that, but I think he knows better what the proportion of Russians in the eastern parts of Ukraine is. I know we have an issue in the Moldavian, or how it's called, I don't know in English, Moldavian Republic or stuff like that. There are about 20 or 30% Russians. I don't know exactly. And we have some issues there because it's actually something just like Eastern Ukraine, but only it's a bit further than from the borders of Russia. So I presume the situation is almost the same. So there are, of course, some Moldavians which want to be part of Russia or something like that. Also in Ukraine, in Donbass or Luhansk or the other regions near the Russian border, the same. But I for example, don't believe the majority of the people there wanted to be part of Russia. I don't believe that.
Yeah, I would not be the best person. Probably Nix Gilvey is another person who has more insight into that. So he could be another person to check and see what he's been saying, if he's had anything to say about it. All right, anything else, or shall we go to another question? I got a question here in the chat. All right, so anything else, Tulf?
think we settled it. Only one thing about the discussion, if I recall well, last last week about the cities in Europe. So I visited Madrid, or and also Barcelona. I just don't like. I don't know why. I don't like city. But Madrid is, or how you call it, with a Spanish accent.
Madrid.
Is my favorite city. Madrid, yes, is my favorite city in Europe. And
Oh, really?
yes, is my favorite. You see statues everywhere,
Hmm.
and the people are calm and.
I can say for me, like Madrid doesn't like blow me away as far as like aesthetics or architecture, but I will say that I've always had a good time in Madrid. I have very pleasant memories of all the times that I've gone to Madrid or stayed in Madrid for a while. Yeah, so I can definitely see where you're coming from there. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. All right, then let's get to this question here in the chat. It says, it's Orthodoxy Proxy says, do you think global homo still requires a powerful America, or has the groundwork been built beyond this need now? Thinking in relation to the rise of China and the belligerence of Russia. I would say that yes, the groundwork has definitely been built, and this is kind of like the ultimate horseshoe, or not even horseshoe. It's a full circle that you can get into whenever you talk about, the pernicious influence of America, because a lot of the worst ideas that come out of America have their origin in Europe, and a lot of these originators are neither European or American, if you get my point. So, um, you can look at the Frankfurt School and Gramsci and Marx and all sorts of other things that originated in Europe, then went to America and sort of became like those ideas put on steroids, and now they're coming out of America and going everywhere else. But I don't think global homo. Look, if you have all of the European films, if you have all the European industries, all the European private sector, everyone, I think, the global homo now, the global part is more important than the America part. Everyone is working to fulfill ESG obligations, and that's environmental, social, and governance. So, this is why, by the way, this is why you're not going to see an end to race-swapped characters in films. You're not going to see an end to Lord of the Rings adaptations with a bunch of blacks. You're not going to see an end to some Disney princess being played by a black person or whatever, because the film studios and the streaming platforms or whatever who produce these things, they want good ESG scores. And you get a good ESG score by promoting diversity. And this is why I get annoyed when people say, oh, the World Economic Forum is not important. No, that's where they agree on these things. That's where they agree on promoting diversity in all your films and having, quotas for your business or quotas for the amount of black actors in a series or whatever. It's all connected to this ESG requirement that they're all agreeing to. And it comes from places like the World Economic Forum. And so I think the groundwork has been laid. I think more than the groundwork, we're now building towers on the ground. We're building skyscrapers on this ground. It's been fully developed. And I think, America is definitely, I would say America is the epicenter of it. So much of cultural rot has come from America since the post-war era, but that's because America is the leading power since the post-war era. If we were talking about cultural rot in another time, we would say it's coming from the British Empire. That's where the wandering finance class set up their base in the city of London or Amsterdam. If you want to go back farther, we could say that the rot was coming from Spain. So it's difficult to like say that it's coming from a certain country, or it's contingent upon a certain country being the power. This is a bacteria that's in the bloodstream, and it just flows. It's a parasite that's in the bloodstream that goes from host to host. And so I think if we were to go into the multipolar world, I don't expect a decrease in any sort of like of the cultural rot, the global homo rot that we've been dealing with. Like we were just talking about, Cuba legalizing gay marriage, abortion being legalized in Argentina after a highly toxic Bolshevik campaign to legalize abortion there. So if you're someone who defends traditional values, if you're someone who opposes, the global homo, I don't think, the fall of America, the end of the unipolar world is going to bring any respite. I hope that answers your question. Pox, southernmost nationalist, who, by the way, recently became a father. So congratulations, southernmost nationalist. He asks, is Florida the new Italy? I don't know. I've never been to Florida. So he says, we're both peninsulas surrounded by land that aches to be conquered. Well, I guess in that case, sure. Yeah, does the land surrounding Italy ache to be conquered? I don't know. Whoever's going to conquer it, I don't think it's going to be very pleasant. All right, let's see. You guys are talking about Dugan in the chat. Let's see if anyone else has got their hand up if they want to call in. Let me check here. All right, no, I don't see anyone. If you want to, we'll do like literally last call. So if you want to share your thoughts on any of the things we've been talking about tonight, or if you want to add something totally different, I'll give the sign for last call here. And if there's anything in the chat that you want to say, or if you want to send something to the entropy, we'll go for a few more minutes here, like another 5 or 10 minutes. Reed Johnson has something that I think is worth sharing here. He says, some have also accused Dugan of being a Putin shill. Whatever the case, his public positions, depending on his audience, seem to not diverge from Russia's current Eurasianism. At minimum, he appears to be tolerated and has a free hand to expound his views in Putin's Russia. Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid take. That's why I don't like Dugan. I don't like what he stands for. I don't think he's irrelevant. And I don't like Eurasianism. So, I am a radical nationalist. Radical coming from the word for roots. Radici, raiz. I am an ethno-nationalist. I am a radical nationalist. I care about the roots of my people, my culture. And, it's for someone like me, it's difficult to talk about my people. I live in a country that's not my native country. I was born into a country that I never really had any, pleasant feeling of connection to. And I have dual ethnicity. I have two ethnicities mixed in my veins. But that, just because I'm an outlier doesn't mean that I believe that everyone else should be, or that I can't support other people who are more whole than I am, who have more connection to their soil, a more whole bloodline, that not so mixed as mine. I'm fighting in their corner, and Eurasianism threatens them. And I consider myself, someone who's championing not just things that I want, but things that I believe are also what other people want and are good for other people. And so Eurasianism is fundamentally in opposition to what I consider important, which is the survival and thriving of the ethnic European nations. And so I really get annoyed when I see so many people saying that Dugin's not that bad. Oh, he just wants a multipolar world. He just wants to get America off its perch. No, he hates Europe. My knowledge of Russian history and philosophy and all that stuff isn't, as in depth as others might be. But you don't have to go too far in depth to know that Russia has a history of being anti-European. And yes, at times Russia's direction was commandeered by people who weren't even Russian. But there are plenty of ethnic Russians who consider themselves not part of Europe, and indeed they have an antagonistic view to Europe. So I don't think Dugin's position is even revolutionary or new, really. Okay, another question here. Orthodoxy Proxy asks, what relationship should the dissident right have with conspiracy culture? Whatever it wants. I think the last 2 years have shown that a lot of things that we thought are conspiracies are conspiracy theories, are not theories at all, but they are in fact genuine conspiracies. People conspire to do things and then they do them. September 11th, I think, is another great example. And I think that the dissident right should be more open to conspiracy culture, because there is a wealth of truth to be found there. And it can also help you understand where things are going and even the why behind them, especially when it comes to conspiracies revolving Zionism, revolving biblical prophecy and the zealots who want to fulfill it. And also, I think it was life-saving to be adjacent to conspiracy culture with regards to the COVID vaccines. If it wasn't for a bunch of conspiracy, people, conspiracy types, or people at least open to scratching the surface, peeking behind the curtain, I might not have realized, just how bad the vaccines were going to be. I think I'm the kind of person who has such a distrust of authority, especially authority when I see it as being malevolent towards me, antagonistic towards me and my values, and people who, are from Europe. I don't need much to start doubting the designs of the current ruling regime. But, at the start of COVID, I thought, yeah, this is a virus. It's dangerous. It's going to be, we gotta stay at home for 2 weeks to make sure that hospitals don't collapse. That's our civic duty. We got to make sure that our elders don't get sick and die. We have that responsibility to them. So at the start, I was totally okay with these things and thought that these were, necessary and good actions. And within a couple of weeks of being in lockdown, thanks to being stuck at home and, being on platforms like Telegram and following people like Computing Forever, amongst others, I quickly realized that, no, this is actually nothing to do with protecting the elderly or preventing hospital collapse. In fact, this might not even have anything to do with the virus at all. So I think the dissident right should be much more, have much more affinity towards conspiracy culture. I think it's pretty easy to identify conspiracies which are out of line. And I've actually done this on many occasions. I've called out conspiracy culture regarding Klaus Schwab, in particular. One recent example. There's a page here a channel here on Telegram that has like tens of thousands of followers, maybe even hundreds of thousands. It's called Awakening Species or the Awakened Species or something like that. Really pretentious name too. Like, I don't consider myself awake, and everyone else just doesn't know the things I know. I think that I have instincts that help me gauge certain things. And I think I'm lucky enough to know about the existence of other people who put in the work to dig up stuff and look behind the curtain, and I just am lucky to have come across them and like what they do. So I called out this page, this channel, because it was promoting the fake conspiracy, the lie, that there's a page in Klaus Schwab's book called The Great Reset where he says that we need to reduce the world's population to 1 billion and we need to control people's every aspect of their lives and blah, blah. And it's like totally ridiculous, in your face tyranny and genocidal, maniacal bloodlust and everything. It's just, it doesn't sound like Klaus Schwab at all. And it's not something that these people who are, increasingly out in the open, putting what they want out in the open bluntly. But there's no way that someone like Klaus Schwab will ever be that blunt. And all it takes is a 5-second Google search to realize that screenshot is from a totally different book. It's not from Schwab's book. And so people who want to post conspiracy stuff about the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab should at least, keep it true. You don't need, the guy has said plenty of other things that are, awful. His vision he's laid out his vision and it's awful in most cases. So you don't need to dig up some obscure page in a obscure book that sounds really, really, terrifying. Oh, they're going to reduce the world population to 1 billion. Just, no need for that. It's a lie. Don't do it. And that it should be easy to, if it sounds too crazy to be true, if it sounds too good to be true, if it sounds, if it lines up too much with what you think is or should be happening, what your predictions are, doesn't mean that it's not true, but it means that you should probably verify it before you boost it or post it or believe it. For me, I don't know, it's just been always easy for me to tell. Like, I have pretty good bullshit sensors, And then another thing too is, like, sometimes it's okay to just have an imagination and speculate. I like to get into esotericism and esoterica, and I like to entertain stuff that you can't really prove or disprove. It's just speculation. It's just imagination. But I think it's good to do that. I think it can get your mind thinking in different ways. It can lead you to different paths to finding something that we can call the truth. And Morgoth had a good take on this when he was addressing a similar question. He just said, back in the day, it wasn't called conspiracy theory and schizo. It was just called sleuthing. Back in the days when the internet was a bit more wild, a bit more untamed, you could go digging it into all these different parts of the internet and chat forums and stuff, and you'd be sleuthing. I think that also develops good instincts too, good investigative instincts. Okay, Southernmost Nationalist says, can you talk about American balkanization in the context of Rome collapsing? Yeah, and I've done this on a few occasions. I've looked at the parallels between the fall of Rome and the rise of nations, the rise of Europe's nations. I have no idea what an American balkanization would look like. I think the divisions are racial, but the divisions are also urban and rural. You have states like Texas, which are mostly, conservative Republican, but whose cities are becoming really liberal and Democrat. So what would a balkanization look like? It's not as easy as, well, all the conservatives will just go to the south and all the liberals will stay in the north or something. You have states like Illinois, which is actually quite red. If you look at the counties, a lot of counties in Illinois go Republican, but it doesn't matter because Chicago runs the state, and Chicago's demographics, Chicago's high population determines its electoral college contribution. So Illinois always goes blue. But people in the rural counties of Illinois are all, pretty much conservative Republican voters. So what would a balkanization for them look like? It's balkanization in the Balkans was a different animal because it was, kind of the ethnic divisions were pretty clear, and also the territorial divisions were kind of, and there was at least a basis for them. Whereas in America, I don't know. Something needs to happen, though. Something like that needs to happen. The future for white Americans is just so grim. And the future for America as a country is just so grim. I think it's going to be, I've said this before, that's not going to be like an entertaining Hollywood blockbuster. This is going to be a really frustrating, slow, dysfunctional collapse. Just the country is going to slowly become more and more like Detroit, or, like we were talking about earlier, a South American country. Things aren't going to work. Police aren't going to do their jobs. Public works are going to fall apart. Bridges are going to collapse. Water won't come out of your tap. And I just, that's my sort of like, worst case scenario, black pilled take. But if you look at the cycles of history, whenever a grand civilization or an empire reaches its, expiry date and kind of falls apart, as they always do, something rises from it. And usually it's nations. It's people claiming sovereignty. Look at the fall of Rome or the fall of the Soviet Union. I think, we can see that the fall of Rome gave rise to the Germanic peoples and their supremacy on the continent. It gave rise to people forming independent, nations, and later on, as you go into progress through history, nation states. But if the Roman Empire had remained, it would just still be the empire. Soviet Union, very similar. It collapses, and we get the rise or the birth of new nation states, independent countries. It's not pretty all the time. I've said before in videos long ago that I worry about, not worry, it's not something I think about. When will it really kick off? Like, I think history is back. Men are being conscripted into the Russian military. They're being forced to fight. They're being forced to fight people that maybe they don't even want to fight against. The average soldier doesn't want to fight against the Ukrainian soldier. These are two peoples who are somewhat similar. You could say they're both Slavic peoples. Many Ukrainians lived in Russia, know Russians. They share each other's language. They speak both languages. So I don't know if something like that's going to happen in America, if it's going to be actual, war and conflict and violence, if it's going to happen in Europe. In many ways, you can already argue that the violence is here. It's already here. The invaders are raping our girls. The invaders are blowing up our concert arenas. The invaders are running over people on the promenade in the city of Nice, Although it is interesting, where are all the Islamic terror attacks lately? It's like, the current thing changed. No more Islamic terrorism. Shifting to the current thing now, it's going to be pandemics and geopolitics and, conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So Islamists, please don't do anything in Europe anymore. I think it's really weird that there hasn't been any major, there's just been like your usual, random psycho takes a battle axe and starts killing people on a, Berlin metro or something. But mass scale stuff like we were seeing in 2015, 2016, like Bataclan, hasn't happened. So that leads me to wonder how much of that was allowed to happen by agencies like the CIA or, the Five Eyes. So another conspiracy stuff there. Galileo's tongue says, do you agree that the dissident right has a tendency to overestimate the intellectual capability / basic pattern recognition skills of the general public? I regularly hear talk from people in our circles who seem to think that people will wake up when the next pack of lies gets told. In my opinion, most people will simply never notice what is happening if the TD tells them something is different. I more or less agree with you, Galileo's tongue. I would say the dissident right, probably doesn't realize that most people outside of our community don't spend their time watching, dissident right videos on Odyssey or migrating to Telegram to, be a part of chat groups and follow channels that promote our ideas and create our kinds of conversations. They're not tuning into live streams like this one. They're not asking questions like the questions we ask. They're not reading the books that we're reading. However, the dissident right fails to realize that the normies, normie right-wingers, normie conservatives, grill dads, they have good instincts. And the right sometimes, some people in the right don't have good instincts. And that could be because of age. Maybe the online right, the dissident right is young. It's getting younger. As younger people are getting more attracted to this circle of the internet. And I think, instincts are developed with age and experience. So that could be a reason why. Regarding the potential for people to wake up, quote unquote. Well, it was really disappointing over the last 2 years to notice just how many people didn't seem to care or even notice what was going on. My opinion of the masses went really low over the last 2 years. But the crazy thing was, talking with people, you could have a conversation with someone and talk about all the things that were going on. And they would say, yeah, this is crazy. The lockdown is insane. Can't believe it lasted so long. That was totally, unjust, unnecessary. Or you could talk to them about the manipulation of statistics or the exaggeration of the peril that was, supposedly facing us. And they could all, start to nod their head and be like, yeah, you know what? I think you're right. I think you're onto something. I've had that thought too. I thought something else was going on behind the scenes too. And you could have this conversation, 2-hour-long conversation with them. But ultimately, they didn't change their mind about anything. They didn't change their attitude about anything. It was like, or even conversations about, immigration or other topics. They will nod along and say, yeah, that's a good point. Or, oh yeah, I've had that thought too. You know what? You're onto something. Or I totally agree. And then, the next day you'll see them sharing refugees welcome post on their Facebook page or something. So I think the question isn't whether or not, people are able to be red pilled or if people will wake up. I think it's just that we are in a propaganda war. And there's no distinction between civilian and soldier, as Marshall McLuhan says. I say this quote all the time. We're in a propaganda war, we are in an information war, and we are all soldiers in it. And that is why we have to keep pumping out stuff. Because the way you're going to get someone to wake up isn't that one singular conversation with them. It's a constant battle in this war. You have to keep pumping our stuff into their brains until finally the shoe drops. In my case, I wasn't born red-pilled. I wasn't born a nationalist. I wasn't born race realist. I came to take these positions over time. In my case, the time went by quickly because I like to scratch the surface. I like to peer behind the curtain. And if something I believe is revealed to be untrue or, erroneous, I'll happily adapt to the thing that is true. And so, I went from becoming sort of like, for example, I was really always red-pilled on feminism, like from a really young age. I didn't need any red-pilling on that. Just growing up and seeing how I was treated as a boy, how boys were depicted in TV shows, how girls were depicted, how girls were celebrated, and I was made to feel a certain way for being a boy. I just really picked up on the bullshit really early on. But then other things like, ethno-nationalism, I came into ethno-nationalism first being a bit of a civic nationalist. Well, I just want to support, European values. We got to stop immigration because these people aren't adopting our values. And we need to slow it down, very Douglas Murray type stuff. We need to at least just slow it down so we can integrate better. It's too fast. If we slow it down, we can integrate all these people into sharing our values and getting along, and we'll all be fine. Well, I realized that wasn't going to be good enough because if you just slow it down, the demographic replacement continues just at a slower rate. And I don't want to live in a world where the English have been reduced to a minority, the Swedes have been reduced to a minority, the Germans have been reduced to a minority, etc. I think that's wrong. I don't want that world. Okay, well then civic nationalism isn't going to stop that. What does? Oh, ethnic nationalism, standing up for your people, believing that you are a people, that you have a people. The problem is, I don't think I am the norm. I think for normies, it's a much slower process. Every time their fundamental worldview gets chipped away at or shown to be incorrect, they don't enjoy it. They don't want to look more behind the curtain. It's kind of frustrating for them. It's kind of tiring or even frightening. So, yes, I think people will wake up, but slowly. And what is scary is that things apparently seem to have to get really fucking bad if they're going to notice on their own. And that sucks because we're all going to suffer then. If things have to get so bad that the vast majority of people realize, okay, this is really fucking terrible. How did we get here? What are the solutions? Oh, look, these people on the far right maybe aren't so bad after all, and they've got some ideas. Let's listen to them. I think to get to that point, we're going to have to get really, really low. Things are going to get really bad. Because, if lockdowns didn't do it, if forced vaccines, people losing their jobs, people losing livelihoods because they didn't take a vaccine, and you still had people saying, well, just get it, or serves you right, or whatever. I look at even countries like Greece and Spain and Italy and France. These are countries where the people they've got balls. They go out in the streets, they protest, they have strikes. But where was it during lockdowns and during forced vaccines? The protests were just so ineffective. They were like, block parties. And they didn't accomplish anything. And we went out and we banged pots and pans, or we had a rally in the Madrid square or something. Or the French, I loved it when the French people took to the streets to eat outside. Unvaccinated, pure blood Frenchies took to the streets to eat outside, having picnics really like in the street outside the restaurants, which no longer would allow them in because they didn't have their vax pass. That kind of stuff is great, but didn't accomplish anything. Whereas, I remember in the economic, recession, the Greeks were out there busting open cash machines, burning down government buildings, the yellow vests clashing with the police, being very aggressive and having lots of testosterone. It just seems like the lockdown and the vaccine stuff, I don't know, they did some sort of psychological operation on us, and people were really afraid and confused. So I think, again, it's like the propaganda war is a fundamental part of waking people up and getting them to not just wake up, but also like start shifting their worldview, shifting their allegiances, and then acting on it. You know, really annoying is also when you get people sort of red pilled or something, and then they still vote for their favorite political party that they've always been voting for, even though you just explained to them and they've come to believe you. They know that you're right, that that party is part of the problem. But, you know, they are creatures of habit. And it's easy to vote for the incumbent, or it's easy to vote for the party that you've always voted for and you still kind of agree with on some things. So yeah, it's a long haul, but I can't believe that it's totally hopeless, because I was red pilled. So if it can happen to me, it can happen to other people. And I've red pilled other people. Not many, but I've done it. So it can be done. People can wake up, but it just takes a really fucking long time. Okay. Reed Johnson says, to be fair, dealing with the COVID phenomenon and the vaccines were a novel political challenge being faced by whites for the first time, but the first time only happens once. Yeah, like that's kind of what I was getting to at the end. I think, you know, being placed under house arrest for 70 days, the fear mongering, the scapegoating, the peer pressure, the blame, you know, no one likes to be told that if you don't do this, Granny's going to die. Or that if you do this, you killed my grandmother, you know, or if you don't do this, you've killed my grandmother. No one likes that being told to them. So yeah, I think it was a different animal to contend with. All right. Let's check here if anyone's got their hand up to call in. Don't see anyone. Stan Lee is typing, so we'll see what Stan Lee has to say. Hope he's not writing a Jewy comic, because we're going to wrap up in about 2 minutes here. Another thing too that I noticed is that, like, in my real world life, if I make a post on, I used to have Facebook. I don't have Facebook anymore. But like if I make a post on my personal Instagram page or something, like, you know, I'll share something on my Instagram story or whatever. I always lose followers, and I don't have, like, the people who follow me on my personal, you know, social media existence are just people I know in real life, like my actual so-called friends or acquaintances, people I've actually met. And every time, like, I posted some stuff from my personal account about, you know, Meloni, and I said something like, you know, watching all the media say that she's a fucking fascist and Mussolini's second coming just because she thinks that men can't be women is really hilarious. That said, it would be awesome if she was like the media are saying. At least it would be refreshing or something like that. And I lost like 3 followers. So every time I give like a based right-wing race realist opinion, nationalist opinion, someone in my sphere gets upset. I remember even in COVID too, I shared a video of this hospital in, like, I think it was Zaragoza or something. Anyway, some area of Spain. And the whole hospital staff was out doing the Jerusalem dance. Do you guys remember that? Fucking Jerusalem is the name of the song, and they're all doing that fucking dance. Jerusalem and all that stuff that the nurses were doing. Well, in this case, it wasn't just nurses. It was the entire hospital staff outside the hospital, in like the lawn, the garden area of the hospital. The entire staff, nurses, doctors, everyone, technicians, the whole fucking staff, the whole thing, dancing this song. And I shared that, and I said something like, oh, the hospitals are collapsing. Oh, it's so hard, so difficult. We're all going to die. It's so terrible. The hospitals can't take it anymore. Really? They are all out dancing. And someone responded, I hope you don't know any health workers. They are trying to save our lives. And I responded to that saying, or she said something about like, I hope you don't know any health workers. I hope, you don't interact with any. Oh, so I hope you don't ever end up in a hospital because these people are going to take for you. And I said, I hope so too. These people are charlatans, frauds, and I would never want to put my life in the hand of someone out dancing a fucking, trendy viral TikTok song. And then that person stopped following me. So, and it was a person that I know in real life. I still see this person, walking down the street or in the supermarket, whatever. And we used to be acquaintances, but now, nope. Okay, so I think we are going to wrap it up. Thank you for calling in. Thanks for your comments and questions. This was another enjoyable stream. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. And we will see and hear from each other again at past 8 Central European Time next Thursday. All right, everyone. Take care. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.